In 1777, General William Howe, British military, British Army, he was stationed in New York. Okay, the way he figures that he's going to end this war is to come down here and take the capital city of Philadelphia. It's the rebel capital, right? So he mounts his warships with his troops and his brother, who's the Admiral Richard Howe. Okay, so it was all in the family. He comes down here. He sails to Chesapeake. Okay, he comes up to Chesapeake Bay. He lands his forces there, and he marches up the peninsula. Okay, Washington goes down and meets him because he wants to stop him from coming into Philadelphia. So they had the Battle of Brandywine Creek, September 11th, 1777. Washington gets his butt kicked. Okay, the British forces, when they come in, they hit the main body of Washington's army, but they didn't use their whole army. They just used the first unit. Okay, the main body of the army went around and outflanked them. Okay, came in from behind, so Washington had to retreat. So they lost the Battle of Brandywine. Between September 11th and October 3rd, they marched into Philadelphia to take the city. Yeah. What they need to do now is they need to bring all the supplies up the river. The British have the city, but they need to supply the city. They need to supply their army. So what they do is they send a fleet up the river to take Fort Mifflin, which is on the other side, and Fort Mercer, which is on this side. Okay. To take this fort, since Fort Mifflin's an island, they can't use ground troops. Here they can. Yeah. So what they do is they take 2,000 Hessian troops under Von Donop, Colonel Von Donop. Yep. They land at Cooper's Ferry. They march to Haddonfield. Okay, and then they come from Haddonfield. They march on the fort. Right. Okay. So now they have 2,000 Hessian troops. They march down Hessian Avenue, fan out in these woods. It's all woods. Mm-hmm. Okay. They have three groups. This is the first point of attack. If you look at the fort, it's like a star pattern here. Right? Mm-hmm. And then as you get further back, it's a straight line. Yeah. Okay. This is what the fort looked like that. Okay. So now we're standing right here. So you can see there's a star pattern. Yep. And then there's a long portion of the fort out there. So that's the outer fort. Right. Now, to defend this fort, they only had 400 Americans. The 1st Rhode Island and the 2nd Rhode Island regiments. Mm-hmm. So 400 guys are going to defend against 2,000 Hessians. Okay, so what they did is they evacuated this outer fort. And they pulled everybody into this main fort right here. Mm-hmm. Okay. When the Hessians attacked, and this is what the defenses actually look like. Okay. So you're looking here. You had an earthen wall right here. Right. Okay. You had a 9-foot ditch, and then you had a 15-foot parapet. Okay. So this is the inner wall of the fort. This fort. Yep. They had what's called abattis, which is sharpened logs in the ditch, and then they had abattis on the outer defenses. Mm-hmm. So they had to cut through all this stuff to even attack this fort. They had to go through a 9-foot ditch. Okay, so that's what this looks. That's what this is. Mm-hmm. Okay. When they attacked, that's what abattis looks like. So you can picture it. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, so it's coming at you.
Yeah, it's pointed out this way. Yeah. To defend the fort, they have to get through all these pointed sticks and stuff. Wow. Okay. They had between 11 and 14 guns, cannon in the fort that were firing on them. Von Donop had 9 and 2 howitzers. So they were firing on this. In the meantime, when the Hessians are attacking this, we actually had a Navy, Pennsylvania Navy. And they were patrolling this river in gunboats. This is what the gunboat looked like. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now they had row galleys, which didn't have a sail. They would just row. And then they had these sail. Okay. These guys were equipped with cannons on the front and the sides. Okay. So they're protecting the river entrance. They don't want the British to get up here. Here's Brandywine. Okay, so he landed here. He marched up. And this is where he took Washington, and then he marched into the city. Here's where he outflanked them. Okay, the British came in, they engaged Washington here, and then they marched all the way around and came in from behind. He had no choice. All of a sudden, he's hearing fire from behind him. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's why he had to retreat out of the city. The Hessians were in command. Colonel Von Donop was in command of the Hessian troops. Okay, Von Donop was also involved in the Battle of Trenton when Washington crossed the Delaware. Okay, that was General Rahl, the Hessian commander at Trenton. Okay, Von Donop was in Mount Holly. He was supposed to support Rahl, so he was supposed to send troops to Trenton. He never did. Okay, so when Washington crossed the Delaware,
he had no backup.
He had no backup. So that's why it was an easy surprise attack, and that's why he took Trenton. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Von Donop was kind of like disgraced at that. Mm. So he said he volunteers. He says, "I'm going to come take this fort." Okay. So that's what Hessian soldiers look like.
pointy hats.
Yeah, well, they didn't use the pointy hats. Generally, they had the smaller hats when they were in battle. They didn't wear these. Okay, this is more like parade dress, but they did wear them. But it was kind of stupid.
Yeah, cone heads.
Yeah, cone heads. Right. So this is the Continental soldier. What a Continental soldier looked like. Okay, the commander here was Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Green. Okay, he was the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. He was in command of this fort. He had 400 troops. Now everybody says, well, wasn't New Jersey here? Yeah, New Jersey was here. Okay, but the day before the battle, New Jersey withdrew. They left the fort, and that was all a political thing. Okay, so New Jersey, no New Jersey soldiers fought here. It was Rhode Island. Okay, so here's the plan of attack. You have Admiral Richard Howe, the British Navy, coming up the river. And you have Von Donop, who lands at Cooper's Ferry. So he landed here at Cooper's Ferry. He marched down what's now Haddonfield Road to Haddonfield. Okay. Then he marched from Haddonfield down Kings Highway. Okay. Right here at Timber Creek, they took the bridge out. You know where Verkio's is?
Yeah.
That's the bridge they took out.
Okay.
Okay. So they took that bridge out so he couldn't cross the creek. So he had to double back down Browning Road, over through Clements Bridge, and then he marched down Hessian Avenue to the fort. In the river, this is what the British Navy looked like. Okay, so here's Fort Mercer right here. Fort Mifflin across the river. Okay, and this is the British Navy that was supposed to support Von Donop's assault on this fort.
Okay,
and they never made it up the river for that day. Von Donop was supposed to get here earlier in the day, and as soon as he commenced his cannon fire, they were supposed to advance up the river and support him. They never did. Okay, so they stayed down.
Here's a silly thing I noticed is look how they spelled Woodbury.
Yeah, look at that.
Wow.
that's the olden tongue.
Yep. So, first day of battle, you have the Hessian soldiers and the American soldiers. Okay, now this is how they attack. This is the fort. If you look at the fort, right here, here's the star pattern that we're standing at. We're standing right here. Okay, the first advancement of Hessian troops was right here. That's that marker.
Okay.
Okay, so what they did is they attacked at this point on the fort. You see this great big piece of metal?
Yeah.
What was that? Do you remember what that is? You know what that is?
Yeah.
Okay. When we were kids, we used to thought it was a great big metal meteorite.
This is a big piece of metal?
That's the big piece of metal.
It's iron.
But what it actually is right where that bridge is was the gate going into the fort. Okay?
Ah, okay.
So they built it out of heavy timbers, the gate. The only way to keep the gate up and swinging was they dug a hole, they poured molten metal in the hole, and then they put a post in it.
That's like concrete footer.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
And they used pig iron. They melted down pig iron, and that was the post to hold the gate in. So that's what that thing is.
Wow.
I never knew what it was.
Holy cow.
So that was the main gate. So they're attacking it at this angle. Okay.
So that was actually a footer right there was the footer for the gate. This
right.
is the gate.
Right. The gate was on that side where the bridge is.
Okay.
So they entered on that side because they had a road that went.
Oh, okay. So the gate swung this way.
Right.
Okay.
So they had a road that went from the house up to the gate.
Okay.
Along the river because they were getting supplied from the river and they were getting supplied from Hessian Avenue.
Got it.
The fort was. Okay. So this is the first point of attack. They have to go down. They have to go over an earthen berm with abattis. They have to cut through that. This is a 12-foot or 9-foot ditch.
The whole time we're getting shot at.
The whole time they're getting shot at. There's a 9-foot ditch, 15-foot wall. The Americans are on top of the wall shooting down at them. Okay? When the Hessians came, they came with no siege ladders. They came with no axes, no nothing. They just marched in here, and they had to claw their way through the abattis. Okay. The way they got across the ditch is they made these things called fascines. They just took a bunch of brush and sticks and they tied them together, big long bundles, and then they put them on their back and they ran up here and they threw them in the ditch to build up a little bridge to get through the ditch. So that's what they did. That's all they did. Okay. So they got them attacking here, and you got the Americans firing down on them with cannon and with muskets.
And these cannon here weren't the actual cannon positions. They were up high, right?
Yeah, they were up high. These are actual cannons from this area.
But that's not their position.
No. Well, it could have been the position. We don't know what the position is. They just takes it out. Okay. So, as you walk along the fort, the second attack position was in the center of the fort.
Okay.
Okay. So now this is the abandoned part of the fort they withdrew from.
Yeah.
And they're all in this main part.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you go down here, off this one corner, you see that stone pillar right there?
Yeah.
That's the second point of attack. Okay. But it's actually not the second point of attack. That marker's in the wrong place. They have them attacking at the point on the wall. They have them attacking right there.
Yeah.
When actually they were attacking in the
further down.
fort. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see the shape of the fort.
Okay, yeah.
And these ditches are a lot deeper because they're preserved a little better. You can see that's almost exactly where the ditch would have been.
Yeah.
And you got to remember they had big walls on the other side, and these berms were a lot higher on this one. The second point of attack is about midway on that straight line.
Yeah.
See where the monument is right there? You see the giant gates around it?
Yeah.
That's the second point of attack. So the second group of Hessians comes in right along this line right here. So they're attacking from the woods from here, and they're attacking right around where the monument is. Okay. Von Donop, who was leading all the Hessian troops, he gets shot here. He gets shot in the hip.
Okay.
Okay, so he falls here. Okay. But what they don't realize is they're attacking an empty fort because there's nothing there. So they all withdrew back that way.
Okay.
So, but they don't know that. Okay. So they're attacking here. And they're attacking further down on this point. Okay, so you can see they're right here. Yeah. On this end, down here. So you get a lot of exercise on this tour, don't you?
Yeah.
So the third group is coming in this way. Okay. And what happened is, since this fort is empty now, they withdrew. There's nobody here to oppose them.
Right.
Okay, so they actually break through into the fort here.
Okay.
Okay. When they break in, what the Americans done is they had taken more abattis and they threw it in the fort.
Okay.
On the inside. Okay. So the Hessians break through here, and they say, "Oh, there's nobody here. This is going to be easy, right?" So they advance through the abattis to get to the wall. Okay? As soon as they get to the wall, the Americans open up on them. Okay, and they just massacre. Because if you think about it, they have no place to go.
Right.
They have a 15-foot wall on this side. They have the river on that side. The only way to go is back the way they came.
Yeah.
Okay. In the meantime, you have the Pennsylvania Navy and their gunboats shooting at the Hessians. So they're getting it from the river too.
Yeah.
Okay. So they march in, they get slaughtered, they withdraw, they go back to Haddonfield. So then pick up their wounded. Most of the wounded were laying in the field. Okay. They knew the British fleet was there. The British fleet was actually trying to fire on them from there, and they couldn't do it.
Couldn't make it.
They couldn't make it. They were too far away.
Yeah.
Okay. So we couldn't. The Americans couldn't come out and pick up the wounded, check the wounded. They waited until the next day. So they come out, they pick up the wounded, and they take them into the house, and that's where they treat the wounded the next day.
The Hessian wounded, right?
The Hessian and the Americans.
Yeah.
There was 27 Americans wounded, and there was over 400 either killed or wounded on the Hessian side.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So.
These 2 days?
This lasted about 2 hours.
That's it?
That was the battle here, the land battle.
Yeah.
Now the next day, the British fleet advanced up. Okay. But they had to go through all these obstacles. They had what's called chevaux de frise in the river, which are just big boxes with pointed sticks on them with iron tips to prevent the ships from coming up into Philadelphia. They had to navigate that, and they had to navigate the shallows. The American gunboats were already shallow. They're little boats.
Yeah.
They had a 64-gun ship called the Augusta. The British ship came up here to attack this fort, and it ran aground. Okay.
Really?
So then the Americans just bombarded the crap out of it. It blew up.
Wow. So it's sunk out there somewhere?
No, they actually salvaged the guns that are up there. Most of them are from the Augusta.
Oh, okay.
They salvaged the guns. The wreck they towed up to Gloucester because they're going to make a museum out of it later on. Hurricane came through and destroyed most of the rest of the ship, so most of it's not there anymore. But if you want to find pieces of it, it'll be up near Gloucester.
Huh.
Yeah. So there was 2 ships that ran aground, the Augusta and what's called the Merlin, which was a sloop, 18-gun sloop, and the British set that on fire because they didn't want the Americans to capture it.
Got it.
So.
Wow. Is that it?
You can go up and around and then back down the path. Most of the American casualties came from cannon exploding. One of their own cannon exploded on them.
Oh, really?
Wow. There's some good firewood for you.
So what you're saying is the Hessian commander was not as bright.
He was arrogant. He was arrogant.
Yeah.
And he was arrogant at Trenton. And that's why Rawl lost at Trenton. He was arrogant here because Admiral Howe said, you take your Hessians over and you attack this fort. And he said, I want more artillery. And Howe says to him, if you can't do it, my troops will.
Yeah.
So it pissed Von Donop off, and there's his arrogance coming in again.
Yep.
He's going to say, I'm going to come out here and take this fort. But he marched on the fort without siege ladders, without axes.
He came unprepared. He
He
way
totally
underestimated.
Yeah. prior to the battle, he sent a message in to the fort to Colonel Green and told him surrender, and or if you decide not to surrender, there will be no quarter, which means when they come in, they're going to kill everything.
Yeah.
And Green basically told him F you.
Yeah.
So you can see we're really close to the river right here. This is inside the fort.
Yeah.
So you have the river right here, and you have the Pennsylvania Navy firing on them from here. Okay. And they were lobbing cannonballs in here and then over into the field over there.
Yeah.
This thing is a monument that was put here in 1829. The thing in the Iron Gate. It's dedicated to Greene and the defenders of the fort. And it was all defaced by New Jersey and Pennsylvania had their inscription of names on it. And somebody from Pennsylvania came over here and defaced the New Jersey names.
Really?
So the New Jerseys came over and defaced the Pennsylvania names.
Oh my God.
And they knocked the top off of it and all that crap. So
it's been restored?
Nobody can mess with it.
And it's been restored, I assume?
It's not going to be restored now. So now we're inside the fort. You can see here how deep the ditch is going.
Yeah. And then you realize you got the wall.
Right. So you're pretty high. Right? This is actually higher than it was. They built this up to 15 feet. Okay. And now they're firing down through a 9-foot ditch, and then the berms over there, and then the Abbotty on top of that. And primitive barbed wire.
Oh well, leave it.
And was it in at least right here? Was it open like this, or is it all wood?
No, this was all open. They cut all the trees down the front.
All right. So
This is all open, and it was open.
they had no place to take
Pretty
cover
much,
either.
it was open further back than it is now. But this is a 400-acre plantation.
The Hessian army of 2,000 troops during the Battle of Red Bank. One of the wounded was found the commander of Camp
You can see it where it's defaced. I think
He died of his wounds and his body was near the spot.
And did they?
see over here? It's all broken and stuff.
Oh yeah.
That's where they defaced the one side. And I think on the other side where the other guys defaced it. But you can see it there.
And they did this defacing when?
It was in the 1840s. 20 years after it was put in.
Didn't they take?
Well, Donna? Yep. Not anymore.
Dad?
But
You see where they defaced it there? And even later on, you see the graffiti people put on it?
Yeah.
Before they enclosed it with this?
Yeah.
That was later on. That was recent, 60s, 70s. But they
in
defaced
other words,
this
got
side.
all weathered and that's why they put the thing
He
on
was
top of it.
buried here.
He was buried here and they took him out. I'll tell you about that when we get down this one. Most of these cannon here came off that ship, the 64-gun ship, Augusta, the British ship. Down the river. People think that this is the cannon that exploded on the Americans. This actually came off the Augusta. First one.
Yeah.
That's a 24-pound cannon. Big cannon. See the breech is blown away?
Yep.
So that exploded on the ship. But most of these cannon came off the ship. This was a 3-deck ship. They had armament on 3 different decks.
Ah.
64 guns. They put the heavier guns low, and then as you can see, there's different types.
Yep.
They put the lighter guns above that to balance the ship.
Yeah.
Mine was put in the early 1900s. I don't know if it's got a year on it or not.
This is for Green.
Yes. And this is inaccurate information too. It says he had 600 here. He only had 400.
You did the research for these things.
Yeah. Well, there's conflicting reports. Because I've seen reports from the American side on casualties, and I've seen reports from the Hessian side on casualties. None of them are the same. They're all different. It talks about him defeating Count von Donna. Okay. 1905. That's when it was dedicated. So you got a lot of cool stuff right in front of your face, and you don't even know it around here. You know?
Yeah.
You ever gone to Indian King Tavern?
Now.
Right in Haddonfield, Indian King Tavern. That's an actual inn from that time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where Von Donop and his men drank the night before they came here. So that's for Christopher Green, that plaque.
Yeah.
And
Maybe he would have had better luck if he didn't go drinking the night before. Maybe.
Down here is where Von Donop and the Hessian soldiers were buried. I'll show you that.
So some of them are still here or no?
There may be some bones left, but most of them washed out to the river.
Oh, okay.
In 1917, during the First World War,
I missed that last part.
in 1917, when the Germans, during World War I, there was a lot of anti-German stuff here. People dug up the bones and threw them in the river.
Oh.
Because they were German soldiers. So this was the main entrance where the gate was. That was the gate, the main entrance to the fort. How much time does this break? It's my first battle.
What time is it?
11:02.
Wow.
Down here where this cannon is where the soldiers were buried.
Oh, really?
It's between the fort and the house.
They could be on this parking lot then, couldn't they? They could be under the parking lot too then, couldn't they?
They could be. What happened was this land extended out further that way during that time. So a lot of the bank eroded and the bones got washed out. So a lot of them washed out into the river. These four concrete things in the ground. This is the general area where all the Hessians were buried. They just dug a big hole and it was a mass grave. They dumped them in it. These markers are not for that though. These markers are for during World War II. They were afraid of U-boats coming up the river. So they built a tower here and they put a gun on top. So during World War II, they had a big gun here and a big gun across the river to watch for submarines coming up the river.
Wow.
So that's what these pads are. But this is the general area where the soldiers are. That's the tour.
Ready? There was a
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's originally where the gun was built. That's where they moved it in.
Very good. Thank you for the tour.
Huh?
Thank you for the tour.
Oh, you're welcome.